Awesome. Thanks, Dustin. And thank you all, panelists, for joining us today. It's really great to have you, and your generosity of your time is really heartwarming. So thank you all so much. Before we get started, I actually would just love for you all to take a moment to introduce yourself. And Jessica, if you're all right with it, I'd love to start with you.
No worries. Hello, everyone. My name is Jessica Lyons. I am the Senior Program Manager for Tableau for Teaching, which is a Salesforce company. But my bio is in the link if you want to look at all of that. Let me just tell you really quick my passion. My passion really is, and that's the reason why I even joined forces with Tableau, is that it is to help bring data skills to everyone and kind of lower that gap in disproportionate communities and things of that nature. I love data, and I just want to make sure that everyone is empowered to use it. And they've always been using it to understand how they can bring it to the forefront to amplify their voices.
Excellent. Thank you. Etu, can you introduce yourself next?
Hey, thank you, Brandy, and also to Dustin for having us here. So my name is Dr. Etu, and I'm an assistant professor at San Jose State University, specifically the Department of Marketing and Business Analytics. So I do echo what Jessica has stated, but then I think my own demographics is a little bit different. So I'm trying to bring all this data and analytical skills and stuff like that to students who are here in college pursuing a degree in either industrial engineering, business analytics, or data science. So
Excellent. Thank you. And Kira, can you introduce yourself?
Yeah, thanks for having me. So I have an interesting career path. I used to be a teacher, but now I lead an organization of data engineers, data governance, and analytics at Meta Reality Labs, which is like Metaverse, Oculus, and Portal. We support manufacturing and supply chain, as well as customer operations teams for the entire consumer hardware value chain.
Excellent. Thank you. I feel like all of those introductions are very such a condensed little snippet of what you all do and the experience you all bring. But it gives you just a taste, and I think I posted in the chat a link to where people can actually read your full bio that you sent us. So lots of other good background information about each of you out on our website. But let's dive right into some questions for you all. Jessica, the first one is for you. You work with teachers, right? With your Tableau for Teaching program. What kinds of questions are they asking, and how is Tableau supporting them?
Well, I'll start with how Tableau is supporting, because that's the easier part. So how Tableau is supporting it under Tableau for Students and for Tableau for Teaching, we provide free licenses. So not only do you get the Tableau software for free, but then we also supply free resources. So again, the reason why I joined is I am the program manager, and what we've created is we're trying to create a community to get free resources. So data sets, assessments, syllabi, project-based learning. That's one of the big things too, is that project-based learning. Are some of the free resources. We have a curriculum person who helps design that. And then for the students, they have Tableau for Students, which again gives free resources. And then they have their student ambassadors who also work with different people throughout the world to help do workshops and things of that nature, kind of mentor. So we're all about community. If you've never heard of Tableau community, that's what it is. So we are a huge community. Now, some of the things that come up, what kind of questions are they asking? We get, and I actually see some of them, we usually get, do I have to have a degree? Or we get, what's the most valuable? Or the big thing is, what does industry want? What skills specifically does the industry want us to have? So those are just some of the big questions that we get.
Thank you. Yeah, I just love that work that you're doing to kind of bridge the gap between, what's being taught in schools, and then, what the industry really is kind of looking for, and trying to bridge that gap between the two. I think that's wonderful. Kira, you mentioned you kind of have a unique career path with your education background and now working at Meta, and then but in between there, you founded Girls in Data. So why did you decide to target young girls and introduce them to data?
Yeah, a couple of things. First, Girls Plus Data is a nonprofit. We have been a recipient of the Tableau for Teaching program, which is amazing. The licensing was very helpful in the curriculum, so I just want to give like a plug for that program. And as far as your question, Brandy, so it was really unintentional the way that Girls Plus Data happened. It was intended to be an after-school program in the local community. I'm from Milwaukee, and now I live in the Bay Area, but just found a school that was interested in providing an after-school program and thought, I looked around and my employer, I was surrounded by, people that I would assume identify as men, but, I was really the only person that on my project teams often that was a woman. And, with all of the push for STEM and computer science, it just felt like, the students that were also enrolled in those programs were predominantly, boys, if you will. And so, ultimately, Girls Plus Data was just intended to be what I considered like a safe space for young women to learn about careers outside of computer science, still though in STEM. And it just happened to, very quickly find a product market fit. And some of the feedback that we received was that they liked having a safe space, and that oftentimes the workshops and the educational programs that they attended were, heavily populated by boys, and they didn't feel as comfortable being themselves or learning. And so we continued on that journey, and it, became very popular to have that space.
Yeah, that's just wonderful. And Jessica and I are sitting here nodding because I'm sure we've all experienced that. So, so thank you for doing that, recognizing that need and making that space. Etu, you're a professor.
Yeah.
What advice are you giving students to help them prepare for entering the workforce post-graduation?
Thank you for that question, Brandy. So I think I'm basically giving them three different types of advices, depending on the kind of questions they ask me, right? But one of the advice would center about them exposing themselves to opportunity to learn maybe new skills or how to use some new softwares and things like that. And listening to Kira and Jessica talk about Tableau, right? That's one software I always tell them to learn, right? Because it helps them with data visualization and things like that. And also Cole, who talked about the Microsoft Office suites, right? Which she often use Excel and PowerPoint. Those are also very good tools that I ask them, hey, you've got to learn how to use this. Tools, because in the workplace, these are the frequent tools you would find yourself using from day to day. And then when you want to go a little bit advanced, then I start looking at them learning R, Python, SQL, and all those different things. And then although here at SJSU, we do have classes, right, that they can take, which is part of their curriculum, and it could appear on their transcript and stuff like that to have them learn these classes, right, all those like 14, 16 weeks and stuff like that. But sometimes we have like programs on LinkedIn Learning or Coursera and stuff like that, which they can go to learn, because I have some of them either email or text me during the summer, and they're like, hey, professor, I'm just at home. I don't have a job or something. What do you think I can do? Right? I can't start telling them that go enroll for a class at SJSU, but I'm like, go join a short course on LinkedIn or Coursera to kind of improve your skills on this software. And then finally, what I try to do for them is once I see that they are well versed in some of this software, right, then I go into, okay, let me see your resume. Are you confident to start maybe applying for an internship or a full-time job? And then I work with some people over at Career Services who help these students kind of prepare their resume and stuff like that, and kind of prep them for interviews with recruiters and stuff like that. So, yeah.
That's excellent. Yeah. It sounds like it's kind of a multi-pronged approach, right? It's not just
Yeah.
like education is necessarily going to get you there. It's going to be education, the tools and skills that you're using, to your point, internships or maybe projects, things like that, your resume.
Yep.
So really a well-rounded approach. That's really excellent. Jessica, I'm curious, given your kind of, I feel like you maybe have a foot in both worlds, right? You work at Tableau, you're obviously you've got contacts and people, you're thinking about industry and how Tableau is actually being used, but you also have this foot in the academic world, right? Your background's an academic researcher, you're working with the Tableau for Teaching and Tableau for Students programs. What do you see, or what do you wish was different in today's education training landscape, and maybe how can that be improved? Like, what's your take on
Okay, so remember, it's my take, and I'll try to be short with it because I get really passionate about that. Similar to Dr. Etu, as well as Kira, my background a little bit is more in the academic. It was I'm a professor. I do course design for research and statistics, psychology, things of that nature. And a lot of people ask, like, how did you join industry? It is because I am curious and I want to learn both worlds. But if I could change anything, it is the fact that when we go into a university or a degree, or even in the higher ed, like the K-12 space, we ask people all the time, what do you want to major in? We won't even go down that rabbit hole of how do they really know if they've only had so much experience and exposure to certain things. But the other piece is that we look at data as, okay, it is this fine pathway, like these are the specific skills. But people will tell you all the time, no matter how much formal education you have, that doesn't get you the job. It is these critical thinking. How do you elevate it? How do you apply it? Do you really understand your data? Are you in the community of that data? Are you really, what is the value add for that? And that's not something always that we can necessarily teach in a class. So I think that one of the things, if I could change anything in the platform, it would be to kind of, one, make sure people understand you're using data every day. No one is much smarter than you or things of that nature, because I think we see all the degrees, or we see, and I love what Cole said when someone asked about like what software. For me, it's the same thing. And I actually appreciate Cole saying that, because I always feel old, because yes, I live a lot in Excel, like, and I still build Microsoft databases. But with that, and I use PowerPoint a lot, and people are like, what? And I see all these fancy new tools, and I'm learning all of them. I learned many of them. But with that being said, that you have to know your audience. You don't want your tool to outweigh your audience. And so with that being said, I love if I could change anything in the formal education space, is to bring in that we're using data all the time. We make data decisions every single day, even the pace that we walk, the speed that we drive. Kids are using data every single day. And so I think if we can start bringing that in even earlier, that would change that. And then the other piece is, I think we do have a responsibility to break down some of these systemic and institutional issues. So I think that not only is it up to the population, the people, but I think also the institutions are responsible for some of this as well. So I think that we need to start talking about the language. We need to talk about who gets accepted into these programs. We need to talk about the value add of those programs, as well as industry. That sometimes industry may need to look at the resumes. And I love what Dr. Etu said, that a student is looking at their resume and they start feeling that imposter syndrome, because now every industry has a certificate program plus degree. So for me, it's like, how do I compete if everyone is getting these long resumes? But I think also industry, like I said, your formal education isn't your only spot. So giving people the opportunity, the chance. Maybe I have a little bit too much hubris on me, but I'm like, I can bring anybody. Like, if you bring them on, I will teach them. That's not, if you're passionate, if this is what you want to do, I can teach you. And then we can add on all of the other schooling and the certificates if that's your passion. But again, I told you I get excited. I would love to hear from Dr. Etu and Kira on their thoughts on it as well.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you for that. I mean, I completely agree. I feel like as a hiring manager, you bring people in, and Tableau is easy to learn. I can teach you that, right? It's the curiosity, the ability to kind of have critical thinking skills and ask good questions. That part's actually sometimes harder to teach. Kira, I'm curious what your thoughts are on the kind of education and training landscape.
Yeah, I think, well, specifically, I would say within the context of Girls Plus Data, Jessica said a lot of things that really resonated with me. I think the first thing is not teaching specifically the tools. The second thing is, originally when we launched Girls Plus Data, it was focused much more on learning data and doing analysis, which is very important. But as Girls Plus Data evolved over the years, we actually shifted to be more well-rounded and provide different opportunities, not just in analytics or storytelling, but also we started developing curriculum on data privacy, data ethics, and really teaching about how we are part of this world where literally everything we do generates data, and how do we become really good, really responsible and aware digital citizens, and then teaching them what, I guess, teaching them through case studies or hands-on learning how their data is used in the world, right? So teaching them through machine learning modeling, teaching them through SQL, teaching them through dashboarding and storytelling, and really hands-on projects that you might ask if you were in a business role.
Awesome. Thank you. Thank you for that insight. And Dr. Etu, do you want to chime in with your thoughts?
No worries, Brandy. I think Kara and Jessica have given like really beautiful comments on what we could do to change that space. But I think one thing that is being done here at San Jose State University is to add a leadership piece to all of the data analytics, data programming, and data science and stuff like that. Because these students, yes, we're molding them and we're building them, or these individuals, we're molding and building them to become maybe better data analysts in order to solve some of the societal issues. But we have to be cognizant of the fact that some of these individuals would find themselves in leadership roles, right? And when you find yourself there, can you manage a team? Can you work in a group, right? So we're also putting that leadership piece to it, because oftentimes I have some friends of mine who maybe just meet for some tea or coffee and stuff like that, and they be complaining about their data manager and all those different stuff like that, because he or she probably doesn't know how to manage them or doesn't have a leadership skill and stuff like that. So we're now trying to imbibe some of those leadership skills or qualities as we build these students through like machine learning, as Kira has mentioned, Tableau, as Jessica has mentioned, and all those different things, because sometimes you find yourself in that leadership space, or you get that leadership opportunity. So we have to teach them different leadership courses over here. So I think that's the little piece I would add.
Yeah, that's really great. I mean, that's a perspective I hadn't even thought of as part of the education and training landscape. But you're right. I mean, you can have an amazing team of analysts, data analysts, but unless you have somebody, kind of leading them or directing that analytic strategy or data strategy, it can sometimes
Be a mess.
be ineffective, right? You can be using
Yeah.
effectively. So
Yep.
that's really great. Kira, you lead a team. What are your thoughts on I guess I don't even know the question that I'm asking, but what are your thoughts on, coaching or creating new leaders in the data analytics space?
Yeah, actually, I really liked what Dr. Etu said about creating leaders. Nothing teaches survival in a cross-functional environment like group projects. So we've all been through them in college. We hated them. We were miserable. In hindsight, that's exactly what we work in every day. And so really embracing those challenges and figuring out ways to come to the middle and try to influence people in those group projects is really going to prepare you. The reality is, in any environment, whether it's in a business, non-technical, analytics, technical, it's going to require influencing outside of the query that you write and how optimized it is and how much resource allocation you have from a technical perspective. You're going to have to influence somebody to get there. And so really creating those leaders is important. Being able to communicate the business impact. I think one of the things that I'm seeing in some programs as a hiring manager is a lot of people are really wanting to get into data and analytics, which I think is great because there's a shortage of talent. The programs are not always preparing people for what the business needs from a data and analytics perspective. And so we get these really strong candidates that know these tools, that have got this really great hands-on technical experience, but not really quite sure how to communicate how that's going to help my business stakeholders, right? And so I tend to tell people, if you're going to go into a program, looking at what are the opportunities that it provides you to do practical real world projects, and then be able to communicate the value of the work that you did to solve that actual business problem. I think that's really helpful and something I'd like to see more in these programs.
Yeah, that's absolutely brilliant. Thank you for those insights. I have one other question that I want to ask all of you, and then hopefully we have a little bit of time to take a question or two from the audience. So for those tuning in, post a question in the chat. But the last question that I have for each of you is, what's one piece of advice that you would give someone entering or transitioning into the field of analytics? Specifically someone who's maybe evaluating the different education options available to them. What maybe should they focus on? And Kira, I know you just kind of mentioned that, but if you, I don't know if you want to add to that, or if maybe you have a different tip that you want to provide people.
I think, just to add on to that is, so I went to University of Wisconsin-Milwaukee for my master's program, and one of the courses I had that was the most meaningful for me was we got data from a local business, and the professor that we worked with that business to get this data set, to cleanse the data set, and then to essentially create a case study. And then the CEO of that business came and we presented to them and they gave us feedback. And that really resonated with me because I was able to connect that to a problem that a business was having. As somebody who got started in data analytics a little bit late, when I looked at, the different options for learning SQL, for example, you might go to AdventureWorks. But if you've never worked in data analytics, you may not even know where to start with the questions. They just say, start asking the data questions. So I think being able to, interview that program as well and say, what opportunities do you have for me? Do you have connections with businesses that will allow me to work with them in like a really practical way? I think that would be really helpful.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think we've all done those projects where it's like the project has been set up for you and it's kind of like this toy example, I mean, it may be real data, but it's kind of cleaned and all of that. Reality is much different, right? So I love that practical, real world, working with an actual, business in the industry. I think that's brilliant. Jessica, what are your thoughts?
It would literally be just to mimic kind of what Kira said, and just to re-articulate it a little bit differently, is that 100% as a professor, as a course designer, we have to understand the setup of that course. You literally have between sometimes 6 weeks to 16 weeks. It is very structured. There's different accreditation objectives sometimes depending on the university. So kind of what Kira said is not only asking the professor, but also finding your passion and going there. Literally, one of the things that I've done since very early is I go out in the community and I volunteer, right? So Dr. Etu said that he has students in the summer, like, I'm not doing anything. Okay, yes, I don't have a job. That's fine, but I will go someplace like a homeless shelter. They have tons of data. Can I help? What are your research questions? What are you trying to learn? What's the value add? And kind of doing that hands-on experience. And network. I'm very big on brain buddies, finding people to that you can just talk to and just learn, and then learn who they learn, and just keep networking in that way. I would say that is how you can evaluate your education options. As far as certification programs, there's tons of them, but I would say find your passion first. Go in, learn, play with it, and then your pathway, you lead your pathway on what those options will be, because they're so plentiful and they're bountiful.
Awesome, thank you. And Dr. Etu?
I think I'd say to whoever is having those thoughts or ideas. It's definitely a really brave one, because just looking at the diversity in this panel and the fact that everyone started in a different place and ended up now all talking about data and stuff like that, you could see here that we have, in one way or the other, taken that very brave and bold step to get into the data analytics field. So whether you're looking at maybe pursuing a degree or taking some short courses on maybe LinkedIn and Coursera, hey, my thing is go for it, right? But then also know that the space where you can apply this skill is enormous, right? I have a first degree in civil engineering, right? I could do the data analytics stuff and take it and go apply it back in civil engineering where I have my degree, because there are very few people who are civil engineers and data scientists or data analysts at the same time. So it's a bold step that you have taken, but then think of the space where you can apply this new skill that you have found.